Let's get to the starts and sits now, Fabs, and start with the
Let's do it.
quarterbacks. Who are we starting?
Justin Herbert, your pal, your BFF,
I put
your
him in.
crush in
I
the
put him in
NFL.
over Purdy.
Look at his numbers over the last 4 weeks, 19 plus points in every game, including 2 with more than 24. The Ravens have allowed 17 plus points to quarterbacks 7 times, including 6 with more than 20 and 2 over 30. That is a smash spot for Justin Herbert. So he is a starter. And then we talked about the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. Now he's had 2 kind of mid games in a row, but I think he bounces back against Carolina. They've given up 19 plus points to 4 quarterbacks this season, including 3 who have hit that mark since week 5. So this is a good week to have Patrick Mahomes in your lineup.
Please, 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 please show us the exciting Chiefs offense this week. This is the week we'd like to see it, especially in a bounce back type of situation. They might feel like they need to kind of come out and put the pedal to the metal, and maybe we'll see max Chiefs fantasy assets this week. Who are we sitting at quarterback?
And again, 6 teams off. Do what you got to do, folks. But Brock Purdy, not 100%. And he's been good lately. He really has 17 plus points in each game.
He's been running.
He's been running the football lately. He's had 23 plus points 3 times. But the Packers defense has allowed only 2 quarterbacks to beat them for more than 16.4 points. And they've also allowed the 5th fewest points among home defenses to quarterbacks. So they have been tough at Lambeau Field. I'm a little worried about Brock Purdy this week. And same goes with Sam Darnold, who had a very good game last week. He had almost 24 fantasy points. But this week you've got the Bears. It's something that Lindsay and I talk about every single week. Only one quarterback has beaten them for more than 1 touchdown pass. That was surprisingly Trevor Lawrence. And no defense has given up fewer fantasy points to quarterbacks overall. So Sam Darnold in a traditional 1 quarterback league is a sit-up.
What about the running backs? Who are we starting?
Let's get Bucky Irving into your lineups. Obviously, Rashad White goes without saying. But look at Bucky's numbers. 15 plus points in 4 of his last 5 games. He's in the top 10 in rush EPA. It's a good matchup against the Giants. They've allowed 8 running backs to beat them for more than 14 points, including 6 who've hit that mark since week 5. So Bucky Irving and Rashad White are starters this week. And in that same game, so is Tyrone Tracy. He's been really good for fantasy managers. 15 plus points in 3 of his last 5 games. His touch share has pushed 40% in the last 3 games. He's got the Bucks this week. They've allowed 13 plus fantasy points to 11 different running backs, and that includes 3 who've hit the 18-point mark since week 7. And during that time, 2 have gone over 23 points. So start Tyrone Tracy. These 2 sit-em running backs are not sit-ems because you have to play them. But in DFS, I would fade them. And if I did start them, I would temper expectations. Chuba Hubbard's at the top of the list. And listen, he's been great. I got to play him, guys. I get it. But the Chiefs have only allowed 1 running back to beat them for 13.2 points. They've played a ton of good running backs. And I know James Cook had a good game against them. It was a complete outlier.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy did something that typically does not happen in NFL history. He scored over 19 fantasy points on 27 total yards. He had 5 catches. I think he had 7 or 9 yards as a receiver, and he scored 2 touchdowns. So Hubbard is going to need to get into the end zone and give you 4 or 5 catches out of the backfield in order to really put up a good stat line, or at least a respectable one. So just keep that in the back of your mind. And then Tony Pollard. Yes, the volume could be there because Tajay Spears is dealing with a concussion, but Pollard had 4.9 points last week. He's playing at less than 100%. He's got that foot injury that's been dogging him for the last few weeks. And the Texans have allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to running backs. So Pollard, to me, is probably a shaky RB2 flex at best.
Take a look at the wide receivers.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin gave you a stinker last week. Totally get it. Guys, I mean, it's 1 bad game. He had posted amazing totals in his previous 8 games. And he's got my beloved but awful Dallas Cowboys. They are a vulnerable team. They've given up the 11th most fantasy points to the perimeter. That's where McLaurin's running most of his routes. Start Terry McLaurin. I think the Commanders are going to smoke the Cowboys. They could put up a 30-burger in this game. And then I mentioned Jackson Smith-Njigba a little bit earlier on in the program. I mean, he's red hot. 48.8 combined points in his last 2 games. He's got the Cardinals this week. They've allowed the 6th most fantasy points to slot receivers. And that's where JSN is running about 81% of his routes. So even though Arizona's defense has been better lately, much better and tougher on quarterbacks, and that's why I don't love Geno Smith either, they're still giving it up to the slot. I'm starting Jackson Smith-Njigba.
Sitting who?
I've got Cortland Sutton on the list, and I know he's been red hot, and he's probably going to be in a lot of lineups. He's going to be in my lineup. I know that, but the matchup's not great. Like, you think of the Raiders, and you just think of just an overall general suckiness, offensively and defensively. They've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to the perimeter, and Sutton hasn't beaten them for more than 13.2 points in his last 4 games. So DFS, I might want to fade him. I know you probably got to play him in traditional, but temper your expectations. And then I'm also going to sit Tank Dell. He's been up and down in the stat sheets, but last week against the Cowboys, the numbers weren't great. He's going to lose targets to Nico Collins. When you look at the matchup as well against the Titans, they've allowed the 4th fewest points to wide receivers, and they've also allowed the 5th fewest to the perimeter. So Tank's probably going to be a flex starter in a lot of leagues, but once again, much like Sutton, I'm tempering expectations. Sit-ems are very difficult, guys, this week and in a buy-mageddon week, because I don't want to give you meaningless players who you're not starting as sits. I want to make you think a little bit. So a lot of this information is going to be more valuable in DFS or in smaller leagues, or maybe in Guillotine as well. All right, dirtbags, let's talk about other ways to play fantasy football. Do you guys know about PrizePicks? It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks.
You can turn your hot takes into cash. Fabs, listen here to figure out which players have the best matchups of the week. We always talk about guys that we like more or less depending on their matchup. Then take that information and flip on over to PrizePicks. See if you think that those players that we talked about will have more or less than the numbers that they have attached to them. It could be number of catches. It could be number of yards. It could be number of touchdowns. You can do it all in less than 60 seconds. It's quick and easy. And if you have a strong take about a guy that you don't have on your fantasy team, this is the place to put that take to work for you. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code FANTASYDIRT and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FANTASYDIRT on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need a win to receive the $50 bonus. It's like free money, guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, who are we starting?
Fire the dismissal at tight end. Yes, the dismissal. Lindsay's favorite tight end. He is on fire. One of the hottest waiver wire ads in fantasy football. He's got the Ravens this week. They've allowed the 10th most points to tight ends on a per game basis, and they've given up 10 plus points to 6 tight ends. This is also seeing plenty of targets in this offense, getting at least 6 in 4 of his last 5 games. So once again, fire the dismissal. And Dallas Goedert. It's funny because these are 2 of the guys I've been trying to trade in one of my leagues that I have George Kittle. But listen, 21.6 points in his last 2 games combined. That's pretty good. The Rams defense has allowed 5 tight ends to beat them for at least 11 points. That includes 4 who have hit that mark since week 5. The total in this game is hovering around 50. Should be a high-scoring game. Start Dallas Goedert.
Now, you said that you're trying to trade both of these guys, and then coincidentally, they show up as your starts of the week.
Yeah.
Should we trust that this isn't just you trying to build up your assets to?
Absolutely not. Listen, would I do that? It's all about the matchups. I just told people that Chuba Hubbard's not a great play this week. I mean, come on, kid. Yeah.
Who are we sitting?
Tucker Kraft. Not good. He was a sit-em last week in the column. You know how many points he had, Linz? 0. He's now seen 3 or fewer targets in 2 of his last 3 games. He scored just 7.6 points in his last 2. He's got the Niners this week. They haven't allowed a tight end to beat them for more than 12.3 points. And only 3 tight ends have scored double digits against San Francisco. So Tucker Kraft should be on the bench. And Zach Ertz, and again, another guy who's been, good. He had a big game last week. But aside from George Kittle, the Cowboys have not allowed a tight end to score more than 12.2 points against them. And just 2 players at the position have had more than 4 catches in the game against Dallas this season. So I get it. You like Zach Ertz. He's been a pleasant surprise. I told you he was the reason I was a little bit worried about Ben Sennett back in the preseason, because Ertz just continues to put up pretty good numbers. And he's a team leader. He's a veteran. He's a captain. I just don't love the matchup this week against Dallas.